Welcome back, everyone, to Random's Thoughts. We have some more Fright Night action coming to you today. This is from round 2. So we're jumping in here actually to a DT versus Gilbo game. We're going to be following Gilbo along, at least for this round, as we watch the Luffy versus Gilbo in round 1. So let's jump into game 1 of this particular series. So here we are on, I don't actually remember the name of this map, but it came into the rotation after we had actually started the event, I believe. So we see the now Gilbo patented, maybe not quite patented, but we have the Gilbo Stabby opener. We managed to ban each other's best maps. All right, fair. We have some of the competitors hanging out in chat. It's home sweet home. Thank you. So in response to the Stabby opener, we see a swarm of 1 keys. We got Bachelor, we got Contortio, we got AWOL, and we have a Razormouth. So we see a Razormouth follow-up, followed by Bachelor, in order to try and combat the flood coming out of Gilbo. Oh, and by the way, also a Cowbell. This is very much the standard sort of opener for the Stabby opener. And now we see the player 2 version with Stabby coming out a little late. Arguably late. Now, the positioning here is interesting. We'll have to dissect this more after the game to see why Gilbo may have chosen to put these particular Phobies in the positions that they're in. But Gilbo was able to obviously come out to a very early lead due to connecting with every single panic point. It's a whole lot of orange, folks. But we very quickly see DT snatching all of that back, or almost all of it, by taking the majority of the panic points, as well as positioning Stabby so that way anything that advances is going to get annihilated. Other Stabby withstanding, of course. So we're just trading 1 keys back and forth here, back and forth, and the Eternal Knight follow-up, I know DT loves him some Eternal Knight. DT, you're in chat. You gotta admit it. You love Eternal Knight, right? But Eternal Knight is actually pretty relevant here because of the high damage output. It'll allow a takedown on Stabby much quicker than otherwise might have been afforded. Additionally, we see Baby Snakey, so in both scenarios, we have some very tanky Phobies that are occupying the orange side of the board. Unfortunately, there isn't much else occupying the orange side of the board because DT has gone to great lengths in order to just smack down every other Phobie that was there. So while Gilbo's Stabby will have the upper hand and get the first few hits onto DT Stabby, the fact of the matter is that there's a lot more control showing up in blue than there is in orange at this time. One of my all-time favorite Phobies to use gameplay-wise. I definitely can see it, DT. So we get the advancing of the Eternal Knight, and then we get the annihilation, well, maybe not annihilation, but the softening up of K9000, leading to its annihilation, which this is a good play with the leap, so that it gets in and then gets immediately out. All of the panic points notably remain blue. Now, the Eternal Knight here is actually pretty cool. While we do get the somewhat challenge play of being able to pull the Baby Snakey forward, it is now exposed to the Stabby. And DT this entire time has been able to bank to 7 keys. While Gilbo is now trying to do the mirror plan, I guess, by flooding the board with other 2 costs, he's only got 9 keys remaining. There's still 13 on DT's side, 7 of which are available this turn. So we get a relatively easy kill onto Baby Snakey, and then we see a Blastomatic come out and play. We have multiple slow-moving Phobies in Stabby and Blastomatic, but this triangle in the center of Home Sweet Home means that there's going to be a cluster of units at some stage. And that's not going to end well when Blastomatic has its AoE built into its basic attacks. Even here, the simple hits onto the Flopsy here, or Mopsy, or Cottontail, I don't know, whatever one this is, means that the splash damage is ending up on Stabby. Then we have Stabby eliminating the Resurrecting Phobie, and now it's going to make life very challenging for Gilbo to actually muscle their way back into this game. Flopsy, thank you. So the Stabbies end up trading, and while Cassowary is able to eliminate the AWOL cleanly, look, the AWOL on this board is not really what you want staring down Blastomatic and Jar. So Blastomatic inches its way up, takes a pot shot. We're probably going to see the elimination of this Cassowary. Yep, in fact we do, because shout out to all you dog lovers out there, we got a Snowball. Now the Jar gets a forward position here because there's literally nothing on Gilbo's side. And at this point, I have to imagine that Gilbo has all but thrown in the towel because we see an Alligator. I'm not a big fan of Alligator, and to my knowledge, Gilbo is not either, but I don't know. Either way, we get the positioning so that if that Alligator decides to dive in, it's going to get lit up by multiple things. It actually... We'll look at it later, but I get the sense that it probably couldn't kill that Jar in one hit either. So it's Alligator and Gesundheit versus a very, very threatening board. We actually see the takedown here on the Gesundheit thanks to the elimination via fire. Shout out to Snowball once again. And now we have the Alligator somewhat trapped. I'm not clear on the positioning here for Blastomatic, but let's be real. It's probably just getting ready to start going face, because that Alligator's not burning it down fast enough. In fact, Snowball can probably do an end around, as we're seeing now, and cap this point, or it might have been able to move one more, and it's already in position to punch the heart, is the bottom line. So we have a panic point advantage once again going to DT. We have an in-position Blastomatic that's just going ham on the enemy heart. We have a Snowball that's probably going to do the same. It's not looking great for Orange, and in another 2 turns or so, I think we're going to see where this ends. Yep. Turn 25. I think we can safely call this one, folks. Shout out to the players. That was pretty cool. It was a great demonstration of the particular openers that we've been harping on through a lot of recent reviews. So let's take a peek at that a little more closely. So in this particular game, it looks like DT gave Gilbo a taste of his own medicine, to a degree. We see the Stabby opener, which has now become, I don't want to say a meme, but it's definitely a recurring theme, at the very least, on the channel. Thanks in no small part to Gilbo himself. Now, since I imagine Gilbo recognized the Stabby opener right away, we have to assume that this is the standard response. However, it may not be. And the reason I say that is we see the Stabby from Gilbo, and Gilbo has been known to go Stabby second in this fashion, Flood and then Stabby, as opposed to Stabby and then Flood when going first. As we saw how it played out, it seemingly doesn't favor the second Stabby player. But we'll see if there are any particular mistakes that caused that to happen, or is it just a build loss, we'll call it. Now, this was the first thing that I wanted to examine. We'll pause at the end of this turn. At this stage, obviously the Bachelor is going to die. It's just a matter of what ends up killing it, whether something gets pulled onto the point. This Bachelor is not going to do enough damage to kill the other one via dimensional damage. Obviously, the Contortio is going to die as well. I'm not sure whether Gilbo really wanted to invade here, because you're just hemorrhaging 2 keys for almost literally nothing. Do those keys matter? Probably not, but what's the point in throwing them away? You're getting some damage, but the whole game plan with the Stabby opener is try and get out to a panic point advantage, hold those panic points, and then supplement with a big nasty. Can you do that with this? Not if you're just giving the position right back up again. It doesn't matter. So I don't know that invading was worth it. Maybe it was worth taking a slightly more defensive position so that way you collapse and try and do what DT does to Gilbo the other way around. That is, kill everything off and then recap the points on the other side. Be the survivor. Maybe that wouldn't work out. There's really no way. I mean, I guess Bachelor could have been eliminated because you could have moved something into position to hit it. Like the AWOL could have come in and then you hit it with something else. But the AWOL was clearly getting held back for other purposes. So as we saw, it ends up eliminating the neutral point and the blue point, we'll call it, the one more leaning towards DT's side. Now, as I shouted out earlier, the Eternal Knight is kind of DT's trademark at this stage, where as much as Stabby has become Gilbo's representation in the game, Eternal Knight is orders of magnitude more DT's, because DT has been all about Eternal Knight for a very long time now. So shout out to the Eternal Knight, which right now is a level... This is a level 8 Eternal Knight, so this is a lot of damage that's coming down onto whatever happens to be here. And we see the supplement here. Obviously, the cat gets eliminated. It's interesting to me that DT chose not to take this top center point with the cat and instead with Stabby. I think this is a good call. I think this is a good call, because if the cat goes up there, it just dies, and it doesn't do anything of value. And as we saw, even though Gilbo gets the initial shot, or shots, plural, with their Stabby onto DT's Stabby, it ultimately doesn't matter. You're going to be able to get a lot of this stuff done. AWOL needed to die. I agree. AWOL is a big threat, because while it will go down easily, obviously, AWOL can represent a big chunk of Stabby's health, or other things for that matter. Now, this is a 900, just under 1,000 health baby Snakey. While the Eternal Knight can't kill it, you know, it's going to heal some. It's putting enough of a hurt on it that it matters. And the fact that DT is able to cleanly take out this K9 is what I imagine would have been super frustrating on Gilbo's part. So this is the start of DT's turn. I don't really know about this placement. So what I presume was the concern here is that we would get a double Stabby hit and then Eternal Knight coming in and hitting Stabby. But this is a 1,400 health Stabby, so this would have been 813. It probably would have died. So what I'm assuming here is that Gilbo was fearing the Stabby loss. I don't know for sure, but if we assume that's the case, maybe Stabby should have just been backed off, and then the K9 comes in somewhere else, or just bank. Because at this stage, you're not recapping any positions. You're igniting 2 keys for basically nothing. Now, you still retain your Stabby and retain its health, but is it worth trading 2 keys to keep Stabby at 1,400 health? I don't know that that's the case. It feels like this was similar to the games we talked about, well, earlier tonight, but at the time, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you're probably going to have to look at it in the other videos, which, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, likes and subscribe help, and come on by the live stream over on Twitch, ArchieChompGG. But as we talked about in other games, sometimes it's a tempo loss, not just keys. It's not just a matter of keys, although they're very important. Don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to downplay the loss of the keys. But this turn was spent doing nothing. Like, getting this K9 involved accomplished nothing other than saving the health. Is it worth giving up your turn to put... Well, I guess they got some extra damage on Stabby. So, like, is that worth it? And I think this was tempo negative. And it was not... It might have been better to pull back. Maybe. Maybe it would have been worse, but obviously this play doesn't work out. You end up just incinerating 2 keys, and it didn't get you anywhere. All the panic points remain blue. You obviously lose the keys, as I keep repeating. And you give your opponent the onus, or the ability, to just reposition however they want, which is what we see here. So we end up trading 2 keys for 1 key. That is the K9 for the cat, because the cat's going to go down. You can make an argument that it's 2 keys for 3 keys because the knight goes down, but we're going to also lose the baby Snakey here in short order. Because the baby Snakey ends up at what? Just over 900 health. Clearly the cassowary is going to eliminate it. Now this is also a little weird. The follow-up from Gilbo is somewhat strange because DT is banked to 7. DT didn't need to commit anything. Had all the panic points, had great positioning already on the board, so everything is in Gilbo's court as far as trying to make something happen. I can understand why, therefore, you would want to go 2 and 2, just get something on the board, try and steal back, and then hope that your remaining 9 keys, you can fight whatever's happening. Obviously, it didn't work out. Is this the best idea, or should you have banked? If you bank here, I think you're just toast. So I think you do have to commit something to the board in order to contest. I don't know what Gilbo's other options were. AWOL got hit, animation kind of painful, the nail just rips off. Yeah, it's kind of gross, Onda. It's kind of gross. I mean, everything about AWOL is gross. But, getting back to the 2-key and 2-key. So Gilbo had 4 keys. Is it worth doing this? I think you have to try and fight for board position, try and reclaim some points. I don't know what their other options were. Could it have been better 3 and 1? Or just a 4? Maybe. Having 2 bodies is probably more important in order to more likely take 2 panic points. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if maybe if we mentally play it out a different way. So the AWOL from DT actually plays it relatively defensively, but AWOL represents, as we were mentioning earlier with the other AWOL, and as everybody's pointing out in chat, it's super creepy, it represents a huge amount of damage. Like, you can put a hurt on something with AWOL. The trades here basically don't mean anything to DT, because it's, okay, we lost stuff. It's already gotten its value. At a certain point, you have to recognize that it's okay for a Phobie to die. You don't need to preserve them forever. They do their job, and then they get out. Now, I don't really quite understand the positioning here with advancing the Stabby. No matter if you advance the Stabby at all, it's going to get hit by the Blastomatic and the AWOL, which now puts it at 600 health. Is that really what you wanted to do? I don't know. I'm not sure that the calculation here was done in advance. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have been moved. Maybe it would have. But you have to assume that it's close, right? That it possibly dies. Once you've committed like this, there was no getting out. I mean, I guess they could have possibly body blocked with Cassowary, but realistically, the Stabby was never getting back out, so you had to go for the trade. At this point, I imagine the writing's on the wall, but I am somewhat surprised to see that there was not a Hevo 3.0 coming out. I expect Gilbo wanted just multiple bodies. But Alligator, I do not think is the answer. Honestly, I don't know what question gets asked, and then the answer is Alligator, unless it's you're on Jeopardy, and it's, what is the worst 7-key unit in Phobies? What is Alligator? I guess that's really making Alligator the question instead of the answer. I don't know. Maybe the answer is Alligator. You get what I'm saying. Point is I don't understand why Alligator. AWOL made sure his Stabby would die if mine did. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I probably didn't make that very clear earlier. We're doing this live, by the way, if you weren't sure. But yeah, the Alligator, I'm not real clear on why this comes down, other than, okay, this is a level 7 Alligator, it has 3,000 health, maybe I can tank through everything. The Gesundheit also is somewhat of a head-scratcher. Honestly, you maybe would be better off with 5... But you had 9 keys, so maybe 5-4? 6-3? I don't know. I don't know what Gilbo's options are collection-wise, but this does not... This didn't seem like it was pulling you back from the brink. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. And from here, the game just plays out as we saw. You're going to get some picks here. I do appreciate that DT just went for it, because maybe the idea in Gilbo's head, and probably the math that was going through DT's head, is that the Blastomatic cannot kill the Alligator, or maybe can't just man-fight it. And it's not going to do a great job. I mean, I guess you could kite it around the board. But in conjunction with the Snowball, it may have been able to get there anyway. I don't know. I keep coming back to, I just don't see the Alligator getting the job done. But, as we saw earlier, this one goes by way of the blue team. So, let's take a look at Game 2. So we're back with Game 2 of Gilbo versus DT. In the blue trunks, we have Gilbo. And in the orange trunks, at the top of Floor's Lava, we have DT. So the first game went DT's way. We'll see how the Game 2 progresses. Got a little V motion going on with the Cassowary there. But we see the patented Stabby opener. It apparently works on any small map. Gilbo, shout out for the consistency. In response, we see Cassowary into double 1-drops, which seems like a decent response, although given how the Stabby going second with the Stabby play happened with the Gilbo in the previous game, I have to wonder if DT is sweating it a little bit here. Now, the follow-up from Gilbo is very different from what we typically see. In this case, it's a Bachelor and a Gesundheit, which means that it's going to pressure that cassowary. Unfortunately, the Bachelor seems to constantly do this, where it just dies and then saves something. Sort of saves something. In this case, the Cowbell is going to cap the point, but it's going to die, and probably something just runs out there. But there is a Jar now in position to threaten whatever sets foot on that space. We see the Bachelor cap the pocket orange point, and Maggie cap the pocket blue point, but there's a cassowary now to protect the Bachelor, which I assume was to try and shoo away the Stabby. There was no real threat. Well, I take that back. I guess there was a threat of Gesundheit moving north and then Gilbo's Jar popping out and then killing the cassowary. So it necessitated a move, not necessarily to where it was, but the move was required. And similar to how we see the sire of Stabby in Gilbo, I gotta come up with the Baron of Eternal Knight or something like that. I gotta come up with a title for DT. Gotta think about it. Gotta think about it. The Earl of Eternal Knights. How do you like that, DT? Are you still in chat? The Earl of Eternal Knights gets the namesake out there. It doesn't do a whole lot, but we get some repositioning from Gilbo, who is hemorrhaging life total at this stage. Hemorrhaging life total and only now able to equalize the panic points. Now, it's a smaller map. This map tends to be very aggressive. It will stalemate, but then there's usually an explosive trade at some point. So we get a quick takedown on Contortio, and then the follow-up with Stabby. So we're Stabby here, while we've been harping on, oh, well, it's a Stabby opener, it's a Stabby this, it's a Stabby that. This is more just simply, Stabby's a good unit, guys. Like, Stabby good. Use Stabby. So Stabby shows up. The cassowary eats it. I feel like that wasn't a valuable trade for DT here. They got some random one cost, and it's like, okay, whatever. But we get the reposition here, and we get a Murder Wing follow-up. Now, the cassowary still has Leap live, so if Gilbo is super ballsy, you could dive for the Murder Wing, but you're not going to get it. Similarly, you're also not going to get this Jar, because it notably does the cassowary 501, and it's 508 health Jar. I know I try not to pause when I'm doing this part of it. We'll get more into the analytics later. But now we're settling into that stalemate, and we see some banking. Now, here's the disadvantage for Gilbo. Gilbo is able to bank, but that's because they have 5 Phobies on the board. DT was banking out of choice. So DT is able to choose to get this Blastomatic, which we saw from the previous game, online and start tagging stuff. Now, the Blastomatic starts by getting tagged by Maggie, but it is on the board, which is the important part, and there are 3 keys remaining, so there is the possibility for a Clinico to come out and ensure that that Blastomatic survives just about anything. But instead, we're going to see it start lighting up Stabby. Now, the problem here is that the Blastomatic, while it has friggin' laser, it doesn't quite pour on as far as damage goes. So this Blastomatic is going to take a pounding and is somewhat vulnerable, but its native AoE attack means that the positioning gets very complex for Gilbo. And even in this case, you can see that all of these units have to get shuffled around in a very bizarre fashion. But here's where things may start going south. We see a Hevo 3.0 get an easy kill on the Jar, and we do actually get to see a friggin' laser attack and just zap the heart. Now, at this point, it does look like there's a fair amount of pressure onto Gilbo. We see the panic point lead go to DT. We see a retreat from the Blastomatic, and we see a snowball to finish off Stabby. Gilbo's out of keys. It's Hevo, Jar, and Gesundheit have got to find a way to end this game. And in fact, we see a Gesundheit go down just to simply attacking a Stabby. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. But we do get a very solid Hevo attack thanks to, once again, the dimensional play. Shout out to all those challenges. But the problem is, look at the health on that Evo. That is not long for the world. But here's a bold move. DT with the calculated advance. The calculated advance from Blastomatic in order to stand on the lava and not feel threatened. It's a bold move, Cotton. We'll see how it works out for him. Obviously, it comes back, tags the Evo, and now we're looking at Jar versus Blastomatic. I know who my money's on. Mostly because we already know what the answer is, so it's hard for me to not do that. But realistically, it's going to be very challenging for this to go any other way. The Jar has to run for its life, but the majority of the panic points are now orange. And, like last game, Blastomatic is all up on that heart. All up on that heart. We finally see an attack from the Jar on Blastomatic. I feel as though there were a couple points where that could have happened sooner, but we'll have to look at that in the more in-depth replay. You can see a brief preview of the damage on the heart there. You can see that it's panicking. Oh, wow, that is a very unhealthy Blastomatic, but not quite unhealthy enough. And just like that, the sire of the Stabby opener goes down. GG. So let's take a closer look at that game. Alright, so we're going to look at this game more closely and see what we can determine. Where did things go wrong for blue player? Now, as mentioned, Gilbo is the sire of the Stabby opener. He was absolutely the first person I saw doing it and has been championing it since. The counter from DT, I think, is reasonable. I guess this is how you have to open, both because of this map. This map is surprisingly aggressive, and I bring this up every time that it actually gets played. I play on it or we watch a game. This map is very aggressive because you can very quickly pour on a lot of damage on your opponent. And due to the movement, it can get awkward to try and reclaim the points. Now, from this position, the cassowary has to leave. As mentioned, the Gesundheit can go up here, tag it, and then a Jar hit could possibly kill it. Since we don't know exactly until later how much damage a Jar from Gilbo represents, it's possible, and that thought process has to be going through DT's head. So it has to reposition, but the question is where. It ends up running all the way to the bottom, which I'm not sure that's where it wants to be. It's not awful, but I don't know if that's really necessary. This is a cool play. It allows for some early pressure to be put onto Gilbo. So it's a 4-to-1 advantage here with panic points. Now, I guess the only option for the cassowary is either at the top by the vault or here, going back to that play, because if you end up on the panic point or anywhere else, either it gets double hit by Stabby, or the Stabby can eliminate the cowbell, and then the Gesundheit moves up, hits it, and then the same Jar play happens. So it needs to move here or here, just reiterating why that happened. The Maggie follow-up here is fine. It equalizes the panic points. I think this makes sense. I think Batchel is better in the late game when it pulls big units into range and into lava. I could see that. But we have the DT patented Eternal Knight. The Earl of Eternal Knight has now... he's now exerting control over his domain, which is right now the majority of the panic points. However, as we saw just mere moments ago, the Bachelor that was eliminated here and then pulled the cowbell on, we're going to get a similar scenario here because, shocker, there's a Bachelor on the panic point. So we're going to end up jockeying here, and again, I personally am not a huge fan of Bachelor. I kind of agree with chat that you could use it later in the game to force repositions on things or just more complex movement from your opponent. Here, I think it's just dying and giving up the panic point. That's ultimately what it amounts to. So, I don't know about the positioning for the Eternal Knight. While it does take down the cat, you're trading key negative here, and I imagine that Eternal Knight was coming out so that it could connect with something in particular. If it was just even one space up, it would have been safe from the Stabby hit and then possibly comes in and hits the Stabby. And then if it dies while it's on the lava, Your opponent could leave it alone, like they probably just hit it with Stabby. I was going to say that it could pull something onto the lava, but that's just not going to happen. The follow-up here from Gilbo somewhat makes sense. It does trap the cassowary, and this was the play I called out when we were looking at the game the first time, is that the cassowary has nowhere to go. So as a result, it's just going to die here. This was the play that we were expecting way back when in the beginning of the game, and why the cassowary had to keep moving around. So right now, DT is like -2 keys on those particular exchanges. Overall, Gilbo's lost 3, whereas DT has lost 6. 2, 4, 5, 6. It's not looking great from that angle, but DT does have a life advantage. Has been getting, well, it has more keys in the bank, although here they pull out the Murder Fly. I don't know if Murder Fly is necessarily what's needed here, but it's a solid enough phobia. It gives you mobility, it represents a bunch of damage, makes your opponent's life complex because this Murder Wing is 558 damage, whereas it's only a 508 health jar. So Murder Wing can threaten a bunch of stuff. Well, a bunch of different moves, maybe not a bunch of different phobies. So we're just jockeying for position here, and you see Gilbo bank, so therefore DT banks, and there's not really anything. Well, on this last turn, I could have seen a move to the north just to try and make sure that this point isn't capped. Given that DT was banking, I can understand why Gilbo didn't want to sacrifice Maggie, but I think moving Maggie up here to cap this point actually would be worth it. You move the jar north so that you can chip down whatever comes out of the keys, whatever comes out of the vault. I was intentionally keeping his phobies cap. Yes, I understand, DT. Like, that makes sense. But I think that's why Gilbo needed to make this play. He had to sack something up at the north or on another point to ensure that he wasn't locked out. This is something that doesn't really come up, I think, at lower level phobie games. Because most of the time, you're just trading phobies back and forth. Like, you're getting all up in there, you're mashing phobies, and things are dying left and right. But in this sort of position, and exactly as DT's pointing out in chat, Gilbo has 5 phobies. Can't play anymore because it's a small map. So that means that they are locked in interacting with these. Now, one of them will die. It's not as though DT's going to go full pacifist and nothing's ever going to happen. However, it gives DT the initiative to be able to position however they want and then corral Gilbo into a position that they are happy with. The challenge here for Gilbo is, how do you not fall into that trap? And I think if you take this top panic point with Maggie or something, I'm saying Maggie because I wouldn't want to, like, you can't get this up there, you can't get this up there, and you don't want to send Jar. So it's Maggie or Jar, and I think you send Maggie. That flips the panic points into Gilbo's favor, also sets something up to be eliminated one way or the other. And if you had to lose something out of those two, I think you keep the Jar. Is that really what you want to do? I'm not sure. But like I said, DT was absolutely setting this up so that DT had the opportunity to bank. It's something to keep in mind when you're playing games of phobies. Do you have the opportunity to bank and it's reasonable, so that way you can get a leg up on your opponent? Especially when it's something like Blastomatic here. Now, this Blastomatic is only, air quotes, doing 472 damage but it's an AoE. Plus it has, of course, you know, the friggin' laser. That thing's pretty good. We do see it get activated. The electrical damage is kind of whatever. So we just see it inch up. There's really not much else you can do with it. The position on Murder Wing and Jar means that obviously Maggie's going to go down. What I'm a little surprised at is that the Jar did not end up north of the Stabby behind this obstacle. Yes, Blastomatic could have moved down. Would it have killed it? It would have done 236. Because I don't know. I'm not sure if the damage gets halved on the electrical damage, or is it just plus 236 regardless of what it deals? Either way, I think this Jar lives. And it comes down to, DT can't kill Stabby and Maggie. Like, there's just not enough damage in position. So if DT moves the Blastomatic down, it's going to hit the jar with some splash, but I think you will get the return volley and just light it up. Because you'll get double hits from this, you would get double hits from jar, assuming you left it, and you could walk up Cassowary. Is that enough damage? Probably not. But you also have the 9-key follow-up, so I think putting a ton of damage onto the Blastomatic is worth it in this scenario. And that necessitates having the jar in position so that way you can continue. Then you're effectively trading Maggie and Jar, well, maybe Maggie, Jar, and Cassowary for Blastomatic, which is key even, because it's 2, 4, 7 for 7. But that's basically the last thing that DT has is the Blastomatic. The remainder is whatever 3-key they summon, Stabby, Murderwing, and Jar. The rest of your board is comparable to that, plus your follow-up. So I think the jar should have been up here. I don't think there's any way that it reasonably could have been killed by anything. Like, they can't reach it with anything else. Maybe something that came out for the 3 keys. We saw a snowball. So there is a snowball active, and maybe that's what Gilbo was fearing. So maybe Gilbo had the foresight to think about that one. So instead, we see the Blastomatic get into position, all of this stuff starts to happen. We do have the Stabby back off. You did? Okay. Gilbo's in chat confirming that it was the snowball concern, which makes sense, because then it would have just ate the jar. The Stabby ends up working its way back into position. Obviously, the jar goes down here. This is where it starts looking not great for DT. You realize you could have killed his jar on which turn, DT? This turn? Yes, you could have. So you could have gone friggin' laser right here. You could have lasered right here. So I didn't call this out, but since DT's in chat and pointed out, if you laser here, you end up sniping the Maggie. Well, actually, you'll get the Maggie anyway, but you don't get it with the laser. But you do get the jar, because 531 is, in fact, higher than 508, plus you had the extra 236. So that means the jar would have been out. You wouldn't have been in position with the Blastomatic down here, but eliminating the jar, I think, is worth it. Friggin' lasers! So yes, eliminating the jar would have put you in a significantly better position. I don't know that this random pot shot on Stabby is worth it. Obviously, we know what ends up happening, and you can kind of see the remnants from what's going to happen in the future. This is a weird time paradox thing. But we see the Blastomatic, the Hevo come out and eliminate this, and this could have gotten really dicey. You have to do a lot of juggling as Gilbo here. But I respect this just standing on the lava and just saying, you know what, I'm killing the jar. We're just taking the jar down and whittling down what's left. Now, we do see the laser come out and do cool stuff. Snipes the heart. Or zaps the heart. It doesn't really snipe it because it's not gone. But from here, we know how this game closes out and the way the rest of it plays out. I like the invade here to take this point. I think DT was trying to go for, and maybe a couple turns before this already saw the play happening. As we saw in the previous game where it's, I'm just going to get you low enough to do this. Now, the damage onto Hevo right now, it's down to 1100 already. Like, this is a lot of damage that it's taking. I mean, now it's down under 1,000, as we saw before, because of its own fire. Oh, no, it's still above 1,000, but it's going to get hit by this Murder Wing. And there's no, I mean, the laser's probably still on cooldown, but there was no way to set it up. Now, this was bold from DT. It does have 1,800 health, would have been like 2k before it walked in. But it's possible that instead, Gilbo elects to just go ham on this. If that happens, this is, say, 900 damage. and another 5. So like 14 and change, maybe 15 without counting it all up, plus the 225. So like 17. It's unlikely, but possible maybe that the Blastomatic goes down. You know, like all this leftover damage, we'll say. The 26 from here and the 20 whatever from here and then the fire. But I don't think it kills it. Yeah, I ran the calculation before submitting the move. Fair. Yeah, it shouldn't die. But this is, you know, whenever I see a big unit move in like that, it's scary. But from here, clearly the Blastomatic has to go. It snipes the Hevo. The Jar has to now dance for its life because the Blastomatic has electrical damage. And it could hypothetically kite this thing, but it doesn't play out that way. We do have the Blastomatic almost eat it. I mean, it's down to 1,000 health. But the Jar here, like I said, has to run for its life. There's really not any positioning where it could have been that wouldn't have just ended the game in DT's favor if it was any closer. But, as mentioned earlier, this map is very aggressive. You end up, because of the way the symmetry works, you know, these 4 panic points means that Gilbo's taking maybe not a huge amount of damage, but a lot of damage. And from what DT is saying, this was very much calculated. Gotta get the laser finish. This is just, you know, gotta show off a little bit. It's all about that laser. So GG. GG and congratulations. But that's going to do it for this particular recording. If you're interested in playing in future Fright Night events, check out the description in this YouTube video. You can head on over to the Randoms Thoughts Discord. If you want to see some live Phobies action, come on by the Twitch channel, RTChompGG. But as always, everybody, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and Black Lives Matter.